Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. How you doing? And welcome into the program. Today on the show we have computer and technology news, everyone. A full hour dedicated to stories such as everything about the new Google Pixel 6. That is their latest phone that they just unveiled today. And that's going to be the latest in their line, and they're going back to the premium model, where before they tried to stick it out in the $300, $400, $500 category, and today they return back to the $599 and $899 value. So yeah, they have some pretty cool technology. Looking forward to it. And then of course there's let's see. So there's talk about the Google Pixel 6. There's some hacker news, such as the entire population of Argentina just had their government ID stolen. So that'd be like if the US had their social security number stolen. Just imagine if, maybe Equifax were to be hacked. Things like that happened in Argentina today. We have a new Linux laptop that is probably one of the most powerful I have seen. And then that, just some all-around news. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a really good show. So everyone, before we get started, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, all the shows. And of course, you're welcome to go there and, hey, just check out what it is that we do with show notes, articles, reviews, all that and more. Definitely go ahead and give that a look. Now, with that being said, let's see. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. Again, brought to you by Computer America. Here we go. Okay, so I think that we're going to start with this one, and it's a rather interesting kind of situation here. Check this out, where we have Google. They don't get it right all the time, and who can blame them? They have the esteemed privilege of being the gateway to the internet in a lot of in a lot of people's minds. If you can't find it on Google, then it doesn't exist, which again is pretty much the entire theory around the dark web. The dark web is just websites that cannot be cataloged and found using a search engine. So you have to link to them directly, and you have to navigate them using, the Tor network or something like that. So yeah, to a lot of people, if it's not on Google, it doesn't exist. And that is why this article is rather surprising, because, again, they don't get it right all the time, but you hope that something like this would not happen. And by this, what am I talking about? I'm talking about wheelsjoint.com and how they had 3,000 plus articles were deleted over a bogus DMCA claim. So check this out. Saying that the rampant abuse of DMCA law is well known, in the latest, Google deletes over 3,000 articles of wheels joints from its search results, including the Tesla market research article featured on Forbes, Teslarati, Inside EVs, and many other media websites. They said that Google removed over 3,000 pages, almost all articles published on this site, from its search engine after receiving 4 DMCA notices by info-bloom.site, a website that does not exist. And InfoBloom definitely does sound like a made-up service. So there you go. Now, and they link to the multiple DMCA notices that you can find there in the article. We'll include this in the show notes. But yeah, it's certainly not a good look for Google to be doing something like this to their customers. They mentioned that the notices are written in unprofessional language saying, "Hi, our blog, info-bloom.site, has been completely copied by another site. All content and images were stolen and posted at wheelsjoint.com. Below, we provide all of the URLs of our site and our URLs that were stolen. Please remove all content that violates our rights." That is what the DMCA request kind of mentions. And yeah, so obviously WheelsJoint is going to rehost content that, as I said before, has been seen on Forbes, Teslarati, Inside EVs. WheelsJoint obviously being a site dedicated to electric vehicles. And yeah, so this hasn't been a problem. They seem to source everything, pretty well looking through their site. They seem to be a nice mix of just kind of tips, tricks, news, just a nice aggregate of car news. And suddenly this website out of nowhere that has no relation to cars like they do challenges them. And they mentioned that we believe that the scammer may have temporarily mirrored our site on his domain name and then took it down after Google processed the DMCA notices and removed our site. So this may be some kind of weird way to extort someone, saying, "Hey, we'll keep doing this to you unless you pay us X amount of money," or something like that. And really, it's not that hard to get a complete download and recreate someone's site on your sites. But yeah, this is definitely, I hate to say it because I'm saying the word site too much, this is an oversight by Google. And yeah, you could definitely see it there. So with that being said, the domain info.bloom site is registered and hosted at 1&1 Onos. We reported the abuse to the service provider, but have not received a reply. And they said that they have enrolled in Google AdSense program. Google has disabled ad serving on all the articles removed from the search engine, leaving the website without any revenue, which is really bad, especially for a smaller site like this. They mentioned that submitting DMCA takedown notices for thousands of URLs to Google is easier than you think. You just have to fill out a DMCA form on Google's website, and you include 1,000 URLs in each notice. They said that the form includes a text field which accepts 1,000 URLs at once. So essentially, again, their entire website was copied, mirrored, pasted into this form, and it was all taken down. They mentioned that, but if you want to submit a counter DMCA notice, you have to submit one URL at a time. Submitting over 3,000 URLs took us over 15 hours, and while it would have taken the scammer a few minutes to submit those URLs, which, again, an oversight, you should have a very similar process, but clearly they want people to defend themselves much easier than it is, they want people to report abuse easier than it is to defend them. So they mentioned that it's been 3 days and they have not yet received a reply. So not good for WheelsJoint, and it's really unfortunate that a scammer, I'm hoping that this kind of scam doesn't come up again, but it seems like it could very well be it could very well be an ongoing kind of extortion attempt. It seems like what it is to begin with. So that was just to kind of warm the waters. Now, let's talk about a couple of these. Okay, so this one happened the other day, and so we're not affiliated with Sinclair Radio, But they are Sinclair Broadcast Group, who owns a lot of local radio stations, local news stations, and more. But for those who don't know, they were recently the victims of ransomware. It takes all kinds. So it's not, I know what you're thinking. It's not a school. It's not a gas pipeline. It's not a police force. No, this time it's a broadcasting group. They mentioned, so Sinclair Broadcast Group, which operates dozens of TV stations across the U.S., said Monday that some of its servers and workstations were encrypted with ransomware and that some of its data was stolen from the company's network. The company said it started investigating the potential security incident on Saturday, and on Sunday, it had found that certain office and operational networks were disrupted. There you go. Definitely not good. They mentioned that the company owns and operates 21 regional sports networks and operates and or owns 185 television stations in 86 different markets. Pretty crazy. The broadcast group, which is known for for its viewpoints, did not immediately say how many TV stations were directly affected. The Nashville, Tennessee location in particular put out a notice on its website on Monday saying that they were experiencing, serious technical issues, which is very, very true. That's quite accurate. Sinclair has said that it's taken measures to contain the incident and that its forensic investigation is ongoing. However, the company said that the data breach has caused disruption to parts of its business, including certain aspects of local advertising and by local broadcast stations on behalf of its customers. So, they're working to restore this. They mentioned that ransomware payments globally have reached $400 million in 2020 and topped $81 million for the first quarter of 2021, and that's according to the U.S. government. Again, whenever we talk about ransomware, they have since learned it's not enough to get 100,000 random people in their home computers all downloading the same thing and then lock them up at the same time and hope each one pays up a little bit of money. No, it's much more effective to hit large organizations that may have thousands and thousands of computers in their singular network, because all you have to do is infect one of them, you get all the other computers, and if they have that many computers, they probably have enough resources to pay a much heftier ransom. Makes perfect sense. So it doesn't matter what the organization is, what they do, their day-to-day operations. If they're a large network, then they are an attractive target for ransomware. And in this case, just so happened to be Sinclair Broadcast Group. I'm sure that they have probably cleared this up by now. This happened I think in the early morning of like Monday or Sunday or something like that. I'm sure that they've cleared this up, but if your favorite local regional sport station is off the air, now you know why. It's because they were the victims of ransomware. Okay, so that was story number 2. Why don't we go ahead and just jump right into Google? Because they've unveiled the Google Pixel 6. And this is just after the hardware announcement from Apple yesterday. And now we head into Google and their little response, where they're showing off the Google Pixel 6. And the Pixel line is this weird phone that, the Pixel 1 and 2 had a lot of fanfare. A lot of people liked it, and the 3 as well. But then like 4 and 5 came around and they were going for more of a mid-range. They stopped trying to compete on the level of Apple and Samsung, and they said, we're not exactly the high-end phone, we understand that, but we're going to be the best mid-range phone that you can get. Well, looks like Google is beefing up its offerings a little bit, because don't get me wrong, it's still the cheapest of all the flag phones out there, or I should say the least expensive of all of the flagship phones out there. But that doesn't mean that they skimped on the hardware inside. And then really, because it's powered by Google, it has a lot of really cool features that you're not going to be able to find in other phones as easily. So with that, let's see, we have that one, and one of those that, we have a couple articles, and I think we'll do the one up on the screen. We'll do this one next, but we'll start with this one from the Verge. Yeah, we'll start with this one, where Google Pixel 6, and they did a little recap of the hardware that they debuted. So they mentioned that the new Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro are the latest high-end phones from the company that hasn't traditionally been able to make much of a dent in the high-end phone market. Both are available for pre-order starting today, and they will begin shipping on the 28th of October. Now, saying that there are a lot of things to cover with the new Pixels, but the most important place is to start with the price. And of course, the regular Pixel 6, $600. Not bad. And the Pro, you're looking at $899. So again, in a world where Apple phones kind of start at like the $799 range, and of course you can go with the minis, or not the minis, the whatever the smaller Apple offering is, those go down to like, $599 or $699, and Samsung's the same way, but then the high end only goes up to $899, whereas with iPhone and Samsung, both of them can get up to $1,100 to $1,200, in some cases $1,400. So this seems like almost a bargain compared to those. Now, they said that the pricing is aggressive compared to similar iPhones, Samsung's, and even OnePlus phones, especially when you consider that Google is providing 128 gigs of storage in both base models, saying that the 6 can even be equipped with a 256 gigabyte internal storage, and the 6 Pro has options up to half a terabyte in a phone. Not half bad. Not half bad. Now, they say that, a big draw of a lot of people might be that at the end of the day, the Pixels just cost less and the hardware should be on par. And that's important. So they mentioned that there's a new processor, a custom designed ARM system on a chip that is called Tensor. Tensor, they say, Google says it's competitive with the Snapdragon 888 from Qualcomm, which is what you'll find in basically every other high-end Android phone available nowadays, which is true. Obviously, Apple uses the M1 silicone. Actually, I think in their phones they use like the A14 chip or whatever it's called. Yeah, Apple makes their own. Pretty much everyone else in the market uses Snapdragon and Qualcomm. And then, of course, Google is now working with their own Tensor processor. They said that it is built for AI, built right into the chip, and many main processing pipelines. In addition, there are 2 high-power application cores, 2 mid-range cores, 4 low-power cores, and a dedicated coprocessor for security, a private compute core, and an image processing core. So I don't know if this is the way that computing is going to go for in the future. Designing all these different cores to run at different speeds. I mean, I guess if the operating system can properly delegate things out. So when they mention things like a security core or a private compute core, that's going to explicitly handle things like, maybe secure video calls, or it's going to handle passwords and whatnot. It's going to be explicitly for processes that need to remain safe, secure, shouldn't be found out about through spyware or the like. But then they have other ones where it's like a high-end a high-power application core, which I assume for like video games and the like. Mid-range cores, maybe for like video, video playing and streaming and that kind of thing. 4 low-power cores that might be used for, just kind of applications running in the background or texting or other low resource intensive applications. And then, of course, the coprocessor for security and a private compute core and an image processing core, which I think that last one will be for when the Google phone takes photos, it's going to actually process these phones. It's going to process the photos on the phone and try to clear them up, deblur them, do some light photo editing. So that's going to become standard in all of these phones. Does all of this make a difference as opposed to just a well-rounded, good processor? I don't know. Maybe. And it's all going to come down to battery life, because that's the only reason I can think of, not just to turn the system on a chip, the processor, into just a general processor, is hopefully all of these little incremental or designations mean that you get better battery life. But we'll have to wait and see. Visually, the new phones are a departure from the prior Pixel, and they share a common design language. That language doesn't really connect back to the Pixel 5 or the 4. Instead, they are flashier, shinier phones with polished metal frames, which you can see here on the video portion. And by the way, no notch. It's always good. In fact, some of the wallpapers that they have here, they have someone painting and someone else just kind of listening to music. In the wallpapers that they have there, the little circular punch hole for the camera is actually cleverly designed into the background of the phone, so it doesn't look too out of place. So I like that. That's pretty cute. They mentioned that 3 different colors, but the 6 Pros are decidedly more professional and read boring, when the regular the Pixel 6 colors are more fun. So, and you can also see the size difference here, as well as the camera notch, which sticks out of the camera. So the author says that I haven't really been able to put a finger on how I feel about the new design, but there's something undeniably generic about them. They mentioned take the G off the back and you could have a phone from Samsung, TCL, OnePlus, Oppo, or any of the other Chinese OEMs. Looking at this photo here, yeah, I would definitely say there's a black strip across the back with multiple camera lenses, a flash lens, a flashlight, and yeah, they do look very, very generic. Honestly, they look a little bit like those fridges from the 50s. It's not a bad look, but I feel like it's definitely going to date them, as opposed to, let's say, Apple, which has always stuck with the clean, polished Apple phones. And unless you were really versed in Apple phones, you really couldn't tell the difference between an iPhone 10 and an iPhone 13, for instance. Now, they said that, by the way, Google's rules for reviewers and influencers dictate that today we can write about hardware impressions and specs, but not provide any details on software, performance, or image quality. It's meant to provide a sort of hands-on experience. Rest assured, we will have much more in the full review. So Google, of course, being the way Google is, they're going to control heavily the way people can write about this. So, okay, let's go ahead and skim through the article here, because they showed off more than just the, more than just the hardware. Although with the hardware, they did mention both phones have a 50 megapixel main sensor that is hard-coded to output 12.5 megapixel images, saying it's a much larger sensor than Google has used before, and physically larger than even the iPhone 13 Pro's new camera sensor. And Google says it captures 150% more light than the Pixel 5's camera. Next to it is a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera with a 114 degree field of view. And so the cameras they're top notch. If you're buying the $900 phone, you're probably going to get a $900 phone camera. It's going to be good. The front cameras differ between the models too. The Pixel 6 getting 8 megapixel, whereas the 6 Pro is getting an 11.1 megapixel camera. So if you're really into camera and photography, the larger phone is the one for you. Now, for video, both phones can shoot 4K 60 FPS, which is pretty industry standard at this point. And now complete with Google's Auto HDR image processing, which is, again, what that core for image processing is for. It's for this feature, auto adding the Auto HDR. And while Google has, and of course, it can shoot 240 frames per second slow-mo video at 1080p, which is bit better, I think, than Apple, who runs 120 frames per second at 1080p. Now, so they mentioned the front and the screen, 90 hertz, 120 hertz for the smaller, larger model, respectively, 6.7-inch screen, as opposed to a 6.4-inch screen for the smaller one. So there you go. Let's see. The phones are covered in the latest Gorilla Glass Victus glass and support HDR. The screens are bright and look good, though if you turn them off axis, you can see noticeable color shifts. And that is a drawback of using cheaper LCD parts. But, I think most people will be okay with it. And there's a visible shadow in the 6 Pro's curves. Those are things we don't see in the best screens from Apple and Samsung at this point, which means that the phones are a little bit lower quality, but again, a lot cheaper. So let's see. So they mentioned more hardware here between the two, 6 Pro, more premium, blah, blah, blah. Both phones are also supporting 5G, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.2. And though only the 6 Pro and a special version of the 6 from Verizon, which costs $100 more, will have millimeter wave support. Batteries are large in both models, one sporting a 4600 milliamp and the other sporting a 5000 milliamp battery. So even though they're much larger batteries, we'll see what those processors can really do, and hopefully that you can get a good 18-20 hour charge out of these phones. That would be, I'm sure, to a lot of people, preferable. Google really wants us to know that the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro are a turning point for the company. In an interview ahead of the announcement, Google hardware chief Rick said that this is truly the starting line for Pixel, and that we've brought together all the elements that we think we need to be a real player in this space. And the author says, we can't tell whether Google will finally be a quote-unquote real player in the smartphone world with its Pixel phones, but the 6 and the 6 Pro do look like the best effort yet. So there you go. And so some of the other features before we kind of wrap that up, though, such as this one, this is what they showed off at the announcement, and it has to do with translation. And like I said, you're going to see features in the Google phone that you wouldn't find in many other phones. Check this one out. They say that one of the tricks up their sleeve is a live translate feature, where with Google and their Tensor chip that we were talking about, Pixel 6 can translate text as you type it. Translation is handled by the private compute core rather than in the cloud, so the device can convert what you're writing into other languages, including English, French, German, Italian, and Japanese, almost simultaneously. That's really cool. The phones can also translate messages someone sends to you. The Pixel 6 can detect when the text in a chat app, such as Snapchat or WhatsApp, is in a different language to your own, and it offers a translation. So if you've ever been on a website that had language that was not your own, Google will generally try to translate that for you. And it's pretty good. It's not always perfect, but for an automated system, very, very good. The feature should come in handy for chatting with friends from other corners of the world who have a different mother tongue and they don't understand all the nuances of your language. Live Translate could also prove useful when you're traveling somewhere with limited data and Wi-Fi connectivity. Essentially saying, if you don't have internet connectivity, you don't have to go to Google Translate to do this. No, it can happen right on your phone. It's pretty neat. Google is placing a big focus on the Tensor-powered AI feature. Along with Live Translate, the phones have other language detection features and improved speech recognition. There's a wait time feature that shows the expected length of time you'll be on hold for thousands of prominent companies in the US. And the Pixel 6 can also convert automated call center menus into an on-screen interface so that you can, and this is something that a lot of services, for those who don't know, a complete aside, there are services out there that if you need to get through a phone tree, you don't have to sit on hold anymore. You can actually use these services to say, I need to talk with a representative. And instead of being on hold for an hour or more, you just simply punch in your number and their automated system will wait on hold for you, and then they will connect you, and you just have to pick up the phone when they call, and they'll connect you with a representative when they are, available. So it looks like Google's trying to do a little bit of that through their own system, and it's really, really cool because they've also shown that with their digital assistant can do the same thing with scheduling and appointments. They seem to be bringing more and more of that into their own phones. Definitely a good thing. So the last part of it, let's see, the last one, well, actually it's kind of what we just talked about with the whole turning the phone trees into on-screen. So if you want to see what that looks like, there's an image here where, they kind of show peak times. They give you the call tree and a number of different answers that you can answer, without actually having to speak into the phone. And it tells you, don't hang up. We are working your call through the call center. They mentioned that additionally, when you do call and encounter an endless list of options, they mentioned that you don't need to remember all of them carefully. Instead, Google will listen to them for you and show an automated menu for you to tap. This is in addition to the Hold For Me feature Google introduced last year. Instead of staying on the line, the Google Assistant will wait for you, and then they will simply call you when a real live person is on the phone. So neat features all around. And again, blending a little bit of what they've done with little improvements for the operating system. Definitely a good thing. Okay, so that's all the Google stuff. Let's see, the last thing that is kind of related, and we're not going to dedicate too much time to it, but Android 12. That's right, the latest operating system. Android 12 is going to roll out on the Pixel 3 and above. The company first released the first public beta of the OS in May and has been priming Android 12 for an upgrade. And they've had several other betas. So let's see, they mentioned a visual overhaul. Android 12 packs in a bunch of new features, including privacy, security updates. The privacy dashboard shows which sensors, including GPS, camera, microphone, are being accessed in which apps. And of course, shows the timeline. Let's see, they show redesigned emoji, super important. Got to have redesigned emojis. Scrolling screenshots, and let's see, a lot of other stuff. There's an accessibility option that lets people control their device using facial gestures. Good for people who have trouble manipulating a phone with their hands. They'll be able to use facial gestures to get around. Now, although the Android 12 rollout is underway, owners of compatible Samsung, OnePlus, Oppo, Realme, Tecno, Vivo, Xiaomi devices will need to wait a little bit longer. They mentioned that, later this year, it will hit all of those phones and more tablets. So I think that's the last one. Just Android 12 will also be rolling out here soon. Already there for Google because Google Google runs the Android app or the Android operating system, so they're going to get it first. Fair? Who knows? But that's what they're doing. We had one more article about the Pixel 6 and the Tensor chip and how it actually works. And by how it actually works, I mean more like speeds and some of these other features. It looks like a lot of what I said holds to be true, and not a lot more to it. It's they're hoping the Tensor chip is just more efficient, longer battery life, more secure with that secure processor running there. Just overall a better processor. Will it be? Who knows? But hey, don't forget there's also a chip shortage. So you work with what you got. Okay. How about a little feel-good story? And then we'll get into Amazon and how they might have misled Congress. Always fun. Now, the feel-good story, for those who don't know, there were 2 video games earlier this year, I think. March 2020. There we go, March 2020. 2 video games actually launched at the same time. And you're thinking, oh, wow, they probably cannibalized each other. And, to some very small extent, they might have. But the 2 video games were none other than Doom, the latest entry into the Doom series, which actually almost... I know the one before it was, was pretty good. But Doom Eternal really took Doom to a new level of popularity. And then Animal Crossing New Horizons was the most popular video game on all consoles the entire year. Like, Animal Crossing's New Horizon was undeniably a huge success. So 2 huge games launched on the same day and had 2 very different audiences, one would assume, because one is about going through, killing the forces of hell, brutally massacring and exploding demons. And then the other one, Animal Crossing, is, of course, kind of like a town simulator kind of deal where you decorate your town, you collect things. It's a little bit of a life simulator, think like The Sims, little daily chores and tasks and fishing and tons of activities that people find really, really relaxing. And let's be honest, probably got a lot of people through the pandemic, sane. So ever since they shared a release date back in 2020, people have been very, very fond of taking these 2, two of the main characters and treating them as if they were best friends. So you have the hardened demon slayer being best friends with the dog-like character Miss Isabel, and of course the Doom and the Nintendo the Doom and the Nintendo social media accounts were very friendly with each other. The Doom account was, always being active and, just being like, oh, is my friend Isabel going to be there? Stuff like that. It was very cute. And they mentioned that, now, they said that with vastly different differences between their 2 lines of work, the pairing was regarded a little more than an accidental meeting of polar opposites, but what started as a joke quickly became serious as memes of the 2 spread throughout the internet, sparking rumors that there might be more to this unlikely couple, rumors that they themselves are more than happy to contribute to. So they mentioned that since then, the 2 have been engaged in I don't want to say romance, but still, they made, romance between Nintendo and the developers of Doom, and distance due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and whisperings that a match with a man who mixes living slaughtering demons, and of course, Isabel wanting to be mayor of her city. Today, they finally meet up with Smash, and what they did was, in Super Smash Bros., which is a game offered by Nintendo that also makes Animal Crossing, they gave the Mii fighter, which has, they're not really main characters in the fighting, but you can give different skins to these fighters, and one of them is a Doom skin, a Doom guy skin. They mentioned that the joyous event also heralds the release of Challenger Pack 11 that features several Mii fighter costume, including, a couple other DLC, and yeah. So, yep. Finally get to meet each other. I know that a lot of people were hoping to see Doom Guy in Smash Brothers because there have been other things like Snake Plissken being in Smash, and you have a lot of other characters being in Smash, and so why not Doom Guy? But he didn't make it in, just in namesake, just in costume, but still, overall, it was very funny and definitely very cute. So, there you go. It's, again, I think it was the nature of how opposite the 2 franchises were that led people to kind of pair them up together like they were best friends, is because, they are so polar opposite. So, there's your feel-good story. Doom Guy finally makes it into Smash Bros. With Isabel. Okay, so let's see. There's that one. let's talk about this, because I'm curious how Amazon lied to Congress. Because if you didn't know, when you're called to testify in front of Congress, it's a very bad idea to lie. Lying is a big no-no. So let's find out what happened. They said that 5 members of the House Judiciary Committee sent a letter to Amazon and the CEO on Sunday asking the company to back up previous testimony its executives have given about the retail giant's business practices. In the letter, the lawmakers allege that the Amazon executives, including Bezos, may have misled or lied to Congress, saying at best, this report confirms that Amazon's representatives misled the committee, and at worst, it demonstrates that they have lied to Congress in violation of a federal criminal law. So what happened? So the letter points to the reports from Reuters, Wall Street Journal, the markup related to Amazon's private brands and how the company handles data from third-party sellers. The reports allege Amazon uses data from third-party sellers to launch competing products and favors its own brands in search results, which is something that, a lot of people have accused Amazon of doing. If you're wondering how that little scheme goes, it's something like this. Imagine you're a third-party seller. Every seller on Amazon has to submit a list of materials used in the product, to make sure there's nothing dangerous, or if something happens, you have to be able to replace it or fix it. And you have to submit blueprints or schematics or patents on the affected item. So if you want to sell an umbrella, you have to submit blueprints on how to make that umbrella, and you have to submit materials and costs and all that kind of thing to Amazon. Then Amazon, even though they said they didn't do this, but what a lot of people have claimed and alleged that they did was they looked at smaller sellers and said, this umbrella costs this much to make. It's selling for this much, really good profit margin. We can come in under that, make it ourselves, and promote it on our own site. Because let's face it, how many of us actually go past the Amazon Basic? By and large, it tends to be the best item in the category in terms of reviews and price. So, whether it's an umbrella, a lamp, a USB thumb drive, whatever it may be, they have everything they need to reproduce it better than a third party would and place it strategically better in their storefront to sell more of them. And that's what, according to Reuters, the Wall Street Journal, and the markup, all of them allege that Amazon is very, very prolific in this practice. And Amazon said that they didn't do it, but it looks like they may have misled Congress on this. Now, Amazon has previously denied these accusations. On Monday, the company said its executives didn't mislead Congress and pushed back on the reports. They have a quote here saying that Amazon and its executives did not mislead the committee, and we have denied and sought to correct the record on the inaccurate media articles in question, saying that as we have previously stated, we have an internal policy which goes beyond that of any other retailer's policy that we're aware of that prohibits the use of individual seller data to develop Amazon private label products. We investigate any allegations that this policy may have been violated and take appropriate action. So, looks like Amazon's being called back and said, hey, you might want to fix this because that's you're not being completely upfront with the committee. The lawmaker said that it was Amazon's first final chance to provide more evidence to testimony and statements given by the company's executives. The letter also points to the testimony given by Bezos in 2020, where when he was still CEO, that said that Amazon prohibits the use of anonymized data if related to a single seller when making decisions to launch private brand products. So there you go. So yeah, they say they don't do that, but let's face it, they could also say that they could look at really anything that has like an Amazon basic. It could be a piece of furniture, an article of clothing, whatever it may be, and they can look at their entire store because it is Amazon's store. And this is why the idea of being the storefront and the carrier and then a competitor on the storefront is so dangerous, is that they can look at everything, see what's selling, see what's not selling, adapt sales data from everyone. They could aggregate it in one place, quote unquote, strip away the identifying factors and just say, t-shirts from this brand and this design and these colors are selling better. Amazon needs to make t-shirts that are like this, like this, like this, and they will sell well according to our own internal data. The way that it almost seems so impossibly skewed that a company could own the entire marketplace, and I don't mean, with their products, but they could own and monitor the market and then sell within that same market. Again, it's just reeks of antitrust and something that hopefully Congress gets to the bottom of, because that seems very, very not fair for a lot of sellers. Even though they have claimed time and time again, they don't do it, allegedly. So there you have it. Whether or not it actually works like that, who knows? So there's that article. Let's go ahead and continue on here to our next article. Speaking of useless things, such as inquiries into Amazon lately, the FCC, well, they're going to try to force wireless carriers to block spam text. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. I still get roped into 50 number long text groups where it's just my number and you can see the 50 other numbers in that text group, and it's just, changed one number and they just spam message, 50 numbers at a time, hoping to get their message out there. It's not very effective when it comes to blocking text, although it might be. Maybe they're blocking dozens and dozens that I'm not getting, and I'm only seeing the 4 or 5 a day that seem to get through. Who's to say? But the FCC, when it comes to blocking spam in general, has been very, very ineffective, because one of their strategies is levying fines against people. And spoiler alert, even though the FCC has issued, $1.4 billion in fines when it came to spam calls, they only ever collected in the entirety of their existence $56,000 when it comes to robocall. And I'm amazed that, whoever paid that $56,000 to the FCC for breaking spam calls and spam text rules must feel like the guy that bought WinRAR, who bought that software that everyone gets for free. I don't know. It's not very common that these kinds of rules and regulations actually make a difference, but hope springs eternal. They mentioned that under acting chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel, the Federal Communications Commission is seeking to create new rules targeting spam text messages. Like other recent proposed rulemaking from the agency, the policy would push wireless carriers and telephone companies to block the spam before it ever gets to your phone, saying that, quote, "We've seen a rise in scammers trying to take advantage of our trust of text messages by sending bogus robotexts that try to trick consumers into sending sensitive information or click on malicious links," saying it's time that we take steps to confront the latest wave of fraud and identify how mobile carriers can block these automated messages before they cause any harm. Who knows? Now, combating spam calls and texts has been the focus of the FCC under Rosenworcel, in addition to recently issuing the largest fine in its history, which, again, you can levy all the fines in the world that you want. they rarely, if ever, collect. The agency established a robocall response team to coordinate its efforts against spam callers. The need for the action is, of course, pressing, where the FCC received approximately 14,000 complaints about unwanted text messages, representing 146% increase from the year before. I'm surprised that the FCC even got 14,000 complaints, because I know whenever I get these things daily, multiple times a day, I do not take the time out of my day to submit every one of them to the FCC for a complaint. And the reason why they never collect, it's not through lack of enforcement through the FCC. It's more, a lot of the people that are perpetrating these scams and these robocalls are outside the country. So you can chase them down to, one or two people in Miami, for instance. But by and large, the call center and the people who are actually pushing these automated calls, which are already illegal in the United States, come from outside the country. Come from Eastern Europe, come from Pakistan. They come in places like India. They come from other countries and hoping to get that information. So you can. And whenever you take down the domain, whenever you take down a company and you try to stop them, 10 more pop up in their wake. It's not an easy thing to solve. So I'm not going to hold my breath that this is going to work, but hey, at least they're trying to take it seriously, even if it has such a low chance of actually working. Okay, speaking of other countries, there we go. That's the best way to segue that. Argentina's having a bit of a bad day, one would say, saying a hacker has breached the Argentinian government's IT network and stolen ID card details for the country's entire population, and the data is now being sold in private circles. The hack, which took place last month, targeted RENAPER, there we go, which stands for the... I apologize beforehand to all Argentinians who happen to be listening to this. The Registro Nacional de las Personas, or, of course, the National Registry of Persons. So there you go. The agency is a crucial cog inside the Argentinian Interior Ministry, where it is tasked with issuing national ID cards to all citizens, data that it also stores in digital format as a database accessible to other government agencies, acting as a backbone for most government queries for citizens' personal information. So again, this would be like the US losing all of our social security numbers at once. The first evidence that someone had breached this system surfaced earlier this month on Twitter when a newly registered account published ID card photos and personal details for 44 Argentinian celebrities. This included details for the country's president, multiple journalists and political figures, and even data for soccer superstar Lionel Messi and Sergio Aguero. They mentioned that a day after the images and personal details were published on Twitter, the hacker also posted an ad on a well-known hacking forum offering to look up the personal details of any Argentinian user. Pretty impressive. Definitely try to make a splash and try to sell this data. Faced with a media fallback following the Twitter leaks, the Argentinian government confirmed a security breach 3 days later. Not the fastest, but hey. In an October 13 press release, the Ministry of Interior said its security team discovered that a VPN account registered to the Ministry of Health was used to query the database for 19 photos in the exact moment in which they were published on the social network Twitter. Officials added that the RENAPER database did not suffer any data breach or leak, and authorities are now currently investigating 8 government employees about having a possible role in the leak. Which, a man on the inside, that is also a perfectly legitimate way to hack an organization. That's how the hack on Twitter happened, where almost every large Twitter account posted the same message to a fraudulent Bitcoin scam. Yeah, man on the inside. It's it's a thing. Now, the hacker has a copy of the data and plans to sell and leak it. They mentioned that they contacted the individual who was renting access to the database on the hacking forum. In a conversation earlier today, the hacker said that they have a copy of the data contradicting the government's official statement, and the individual proved their statement by providing the personal details, including the highly sensitive identification number of an Argentinian citizen of our choosing, saying that, quote, maybe in a few days I'm going to publish 1 or 2 million people. And they said that they also plan to continue selling the data to all interested buyers. So they proved it to the record by they picked a random Argentinian citizen, and then this person was able to give them their personal security number. So, yeah, looks like he definitely has it. It's not just lying. When the record shared a link to the government's press release in which officials blamed the intrusion on a possibly compromised VPN account, the hacker simply replied, "Careless employees, yes," indirectly confirming the point of entry. So, a misconfigured VPN. According to a sample provided by the hacker online, the information they have access to right now includes full names, home addresses, birth dates, gender info, ID card issuance and expiration dates, labor identification codes, Tramite numbers, citizen numbers, and government photo IDs. The Argentina currently has an estimated population of 45 million, although it's unclear how many entries are in the database. So, of course, the hacker could have claimed them all, saying that this is the second major hack in the country's history, and this is a big one. We'll certainly know more when this hacker is, if they publish it all, the people of Argentina are probably going to have to do a bit of paperwork, and not just a few of them, but it seems like almost all 45 million of them will have to be issued new personal security numbers. So, definitely not a good thing, but it happens in all parts of the world, not just in Argentina, but in the US as well. I think that the last one we're going to do is, and sorry about that, it was either a feel-good story or a feel-bad story, and I think we're going to end with a feel-good story. So the feel-good story is that if you are suffering from hearing loss, and there are a lot of people, let's face it, the baby boomer generation, or baby boom generation, they're very sensitive about hearing aids. They think, oh, those are for old people. I don't need those. It's a very sensitive topic. When you tell people that they should probably look into getting one, they are very adamant that they don't need it or they don't want one because it makes them feel old. Well, looks like a little bit of relief on having such a difficult conversation might be coming to an end, saying that the FDA proposes a rule for over-the-counter hearing aids, which is great. It's before when you needed a hearing aid, just like if you needed glasses, you needed a prescription and you had to do it through a trained professional. This raised the cost immensely, and the idea of over-the-counter was not really a thing. You needed that prescription in hand to even order them. Now, the Food and Drug Administration is moving closer to making it more affordable over-the-counter hearing aids a reality for millions of Americans with mild or moderate hearing loss. The agency issued a proposal to create a category of approved devices that people would be able to buy without a prescription, hearing exam, or having to arrange a fitting with an audiologist. And yeah, they said that around 15% of adult Americans, some 37 million people, have hearing difficulties, according to the agency. The FDA's goal is to make it easier for those who would benefit from hearing aids to actually get one. It says only a fifth of the people who fall into that category use such a device, and the agency is hoping to tackle some of the barriers people might encounter, including cost, ease of access, social stigma, and state and federal regulation. This is a really good move. This is brilliant, by the FDA to lessen this up. So they mentioned that the proposal is now open to a 90-day public comment period. If and when the rule is finalized, it will come into effect 60 days after it's published Federal Register. So think in about 150 days, about half a year. In about 6 months, you are looking at potentially the chance for, this rule to go into effect. And anyone who actually wants one will be able to get their hands on an over-the-counter hearing aid. Several companies have already made moves to gain a small foothold in the over-the-counter hearing aid market. Bose started selling them. Enhanced Plus earbuds by Jabra can do it as well. And then, of course, just lately, we had a company on the show, which was, wait, I got it right here. Noom. Wait, that wasn't right. Newpol, that was it, not Noom. Noom is the other one, Newpol. Newpol came on the show to talk about just that. Yeah, everyone, it's going to be easier, going to be better. Give it a try. Everyone, you can go ahead and check it out, and check out computeramerica.com as well, because we'll have all these articles, show notes, and more right there. Thank you for tuning in. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll see you here tomorrow. Bye, everyone.